Welcome to another session on OneSource tax provision functionality. And in this episode, we are going to go over some spreadsheet import-export basics. So let's just jump right in. So if you need to, we'll start off with exporting a data set first of all. Within your data set review screen, you will notice there are two buttons. The arrow to the left is import, the arrow to the right is export. And if you want to export a data set, the default is the entire data set. Now you can limit what gets exported out of the data set by selecting either, if you don't want the entire data set, you can select the sub-consolidation or the unit. And if you select either of these, you will need to choose the unit or the sub-consolidation that you would want to export. Give the file a name and simply click export, and it will do that for you. But I've already gone ahead and exported out a complete data set. And this can be a little bit overwhelming because there are a lot of tabs in this data set. There are probably about 50 tabs or thereabouts, and it's everything that governs the running of your data set. So it will include data entry or unit information, but it will also include parameters, which I talk about on another episode. So today I'm just going to focus on what are the key ones that you need if you are entering data for a provision or want to do a provision for a particular unit or groups of units. So I've kind of shaded those in green and going from left from right. We've got the unit tab, pre-tax book income, perm diffs, temp diffs, NOLs. We've got after-tax temporary differences, tax adjustments, and these are federal tax adjustments. We've got our unit tax basis balance sheet. So in essence, that's really our trial balance. We've got a tab that's called states, and then we've got our state perm mods, state temporary difference mods, after apportionment temporary difference, after tax temporary difference, state tax adjustments, and we also have our state liability transactions. I think somewhere here we're missing the federal liability transaction, so let me go find that one and kind of move it into place with all my federal items. Okay, so you will notice that each of these tabs has a pound in front and behind a particular letter. This is how the software reads the import tabs that are coming in. So if something doesn't have a pound, like pound U or pound UTD, the system cannot read it. So I do a lot of these exports often because I know what's in the system and maybe I need to make a change or two. So let's say, for instance, I did that. Maybe I want to keep my original one. So just as an example, if I make a copy of this, I'm going to take the pound UTD off and I'm just going to, put like an underscore for original. So I can keep my data as I exported it out of the software and then kind of start working on the one that I want to import. Now, my best practice is to import only what you mean to import. So I'm working, let's say on the top section, I would delete everything else because I want to make sure that I don't inadvertently change something else and then kind of reload it back into the system and kind of run afoul of something by inadvertently changing an entry. All right, now for each of these tabs to import, you will notice they all have some kind of generic descriptions across the top, unit code, temp diff codes, etc. Key thing is that you cannot change around the columns. So the columns for each of the tabs as the export out is exactly how you need to import them in. You will also notice as we go from tab to tab that everything in terms of data starts on line 3. So if you inadvertently delete this one and put some entry on line 2, it will not import. So Very important. If you're wondering, where's my line 2 information when you go into the software after you've imported it, it's because it does not read line 2. So you will simply have to just kind of reload that item. Okay, so some things to note here. I'm on my unit temporary difference tab. We've got our temp diff codes. This temp diff ID, we typically put a D for default. This is still sitting here because certain data sets are set up as tags because there's still clients that are using tag functionality and not class functionality. So you would put a D in that section. Current or non-current, you would put an NC for non-current, C for current. Now, what are these columns that have U in it? So these on our temporary difference, our unit temporary difference screen, basically relate to the rates. So what is our beginning deferred rate and what's our ending deferred rate? So you will see some have a U, others actually have an amount. So the U will attach to the rate that you have put in the unit screen. And anything that does not say U means that the rate has been overridden. So you can see on line 10 and 11, we've got 0.35, 0.21. Whereas in the unit screen, we have a 0.21 for the beginning deferred and a 0.21 for the ending deferred. So this is telling me that our beginning balance is being calculated at a 35% rate, but our ending balance, which is the sum of the two, will be calculated at the 21% rate. So there is going to be a 14% rate change that's going to be calculated on the beginning balance. So this is how we can override a rate if we need to import it back into the system. Okay, now, because I exported out of the software, anything that doesn't have a balance has populated with a 0. So an important thing within the software is, remember I said import what you mean to import. Within OTP, if you're loading something, the software reads zeros, but it does not read blanks. So if I'm importing something in, typically, if I don't want to import anything else, going back to my import what I mean to import, I will delete any zeros in the software. And as a matter of fact, I am just going to go ahead and just get rid of these rows because I really don't want these either. All right. So if you see down below, I have got 2 line items. They both have the codes of T018. And I'm trying to load some activity. So what happens if you've loaded, I possibly had the 50,676,780 there, and now I want to load in my 10,218. Now, I'm going to get rid of these because I don't want to inadvertently maybe zero something out that's sitting in the software already. But I am loading 50,676,000 and I realize I have an additional entry of 10,218,000. Now, the way I have it in here, I've got current year activity and default. I also have a second line with current year activity and default. Now, when the data loads into the software, it loads starts reading from line 3 down. So in this particular circumstance, what's going to happen is it is going to read this first line 14 and load it. And then it's going to come down to line 15, see the same unit, code, class, and subclass, and it is going to load the 10,218 over the 50,676. So it's simply going to replace 50,676,000 with the 10.2. But that's not what I meant to have happen. I wanted to do something additive. So I have to make a change. If I need to use the same class, then I can use a second subclass. So let's call this subclass 2, and that will make this unique, right? So if you don't have a second subclass in and you need to load something with the same class and you want to keep them separate and stack them, then simply go into the software, into the administration area, to your class data options, and create a new subclass so that you can load it in 2 separate lines. All right, I'm going to pop into my NOLs. because I also want to illustrate something else as well. So in this case, as you notice, I'm doing the same thing that I did on the temps. I've got 2 lines that I want to put in, and they are using the same class and the same subclass. And actually, I'm going to cut this since I'm saying it's current year activity, and I'm going to move that over here and just kind of zero these things out. Okay, so you're saying, well, all right, it's the same year, etc. But you're saying, oh, they're not all the same because I've got a different year generated and a different NOL expiration year on these 2 line items. Well, when it comes to the NOLs, the software does not see the years as being different. Ooh, this is really dark. Goodness, let's make this a little lighter. Yeah, it does not see the years generated as a unique identifier. So in this instance, we would probably need to do something again, like using the default to code to kind of make that unique. All right, so before I do that, let's kind of do something here. When I'm working with a lot of data like this, especially in this case, it's easy for me to eyeball the screen and I can see my things that are duplicative here. But if you've got a lot of data on the screen, you may not be able to do that. So I will sometimes use conditional formatting. I'll just do a quick concatenation. And I'm going to pull out all of my unique items. So my code, my unit code, my temporary difference code. Remember I said these 2 are not unique. So then my class and my subclass. And then I will simply run a, put some conditional formatting for duplicate values on it. And then I will drag those down and it will tell me where I have duplicate values. So I will know immediately to go to that one. I have to make a change there because like I said, if I load this first, it's going to load row 3, then it's going to overwrite my row 3 number with my row 4 number. So I don't want that. I'm just going to copy this default to up here. Oops. And then my it will be unique. I'll get rid of this because I don't want to load that in my notes, and it's ready for loading. So in this case, I would also, going back to loading only what I want to load, I would delete these line items as well before loading them. And that's it on the import templates. On another episode, we'll kind of walk through some other options for importing instead of importing the entire template back into the software. See you soon.